welcome to Taking It to the Streets. I'm your host, Andy Goldman from sunny St. Pete, Florida. This is the show where we take it to the streets, knowing if we don't, the streets will take it to us.
Welcome to Taking It to the Streets. Here we are, another week, another victorious week by the great Rich Beem. Before we give him all the accolades that he weekly, it seems like, deserves, this show is brought to you by Wrightwood Medical, www.wrightwoodmedical.com. That's with a W, WRIGHTWOOD Medical. Reach them at 773-848-7100 for all your used and refurbished equipment needs. On we go with Rich Beem. Rich, so impressive on a couple fronts. Of course, I'll give you all the credit you deserve because I think it's incredible. For the record, you had Fleetwood, who went 4th. You had Corey Connors, who went 11th. You had Keegan Bradley, who went 30th. And you ranked them in that order, for the record. Before we get there, Rich, that course, is it A.W. Tillinghast? I was so blown away by it. I thought it was magical. I don't know where you fell on it. I mean, this was a cross between America and European. It just blew me away. I have the goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah, you should have seen it up close and personal. I mean, it was even better. It was an incredible golf course. Just kind of what you expect from a Tillinghast golf course back up there in Philly. The greens were all over the joint, which is what made them so interesting and so fun. But everything was fair. They had a lot of rain early in the week, and so the golf course was a little soft the opening day. But then, even though it rained on Friday, then all of a sudden we had different conditions. Really blew quite a bit on Saturday and a little bit on Sunday. So the guys didn't go, freakishly low, which I think they could have if the wind didn't materialize like it did on Saturday. But man, what a golf course that was. It was so cool. And you can see how, they would have taken out hundreds of trees because you could see almost the entire golf course from any given area. And I think that's what made it so cool is that, you could see most of the golf course from a couple different vantage points. But it was awesome. I had so much fun walking around last week. It was one of those golf courses that you'd like, golly, man, I wish I had my clubs out here.
It just looks so incredible on TV. And I'm going to plead ignorant. I didn't even know how to really pronounce. You had to correct me last week. If you remember on Tillinghast's last name, I'm mispronouncing it. Wow. On TV, they're showing he did Bethpage. He did Olympic, I believe. He did San Francisco Country Club. He did this cricket club. I'm not even doing, these are.
I think it did Wingfoot. I think, there's a ton of them.
There's a monument for him there at the cricket club.
Yeah, because he actually lived there. His house was across the street from Philly Cricket Club, and so he that was his home, from what I understand. So he would travel around, obviously from location to location, building his courses. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's where he made his home, and it's such a cool piece of property, and everything about it was old and quaint and just like you'd like it, no monstrous clubhouse, nothing overbearing, it's all modernized to a point, but the building looked like it'd been there from at least the 50s. I'm not too sure when they redid it, but I got to say, Andy, it was so fun being there because everything was kind of in such close proximity. You could hear some of the roars. You could kind of nothing like Augusta, but still you knew that something was going on. And so it forced your hand to look at the leaderboard, especially the last 4 holes where they kind of go back and forth. So that was that part of it, I think, was really exciting, especially coming down the end when you had 2 guys that were battling it out for the big win.
It was a great tournament, great course. Okay, folks, I got your feedback. Everyone seemed to love the conversation we had last week, Rich, about your travails in the past, how they somehow met in some weird way with Titanic Thompson's. Folks, stay tuned after this portion with Rich Beemer, our weekly golf portion. We're going to play the interview that I did with Kevin Cook. So stay tuned. That will be coming up after this. It's obviously pre-recorded, but it's the interview I did. And Rich and I have obviously spoken a lot about what a big character Titanic Thompson was. And in my mind, the impact on golf and the bigger picture of American culture, it's undeniable. It's an incredible character.
How many stories did he tell? Because there's one story in particular that I always kind of found very funny. My dad told it to me decades ago. But how How many stories did he tell about Titanic?
He didn't tell me that many stories. I think he really wanted me to. I did read the book, so it wasn't like, I mean, there's the one where he took on Capone and he planted, told him he could hit it 300 yards in the Chicago winter, and he put it on Lake Michigan, and the ball rolled for 500 yards. There's the one where he did a Fosbury flop over a pool table. A guy had lost to him in a game of pool, and the guy said, "Hey, let's play for double nothing." And Titanic said, you know what? Let's not play the game. How about I can jump over this pool table and not have any of my body parts touch the pool for double or nothing? And he put a mattress on the other side, and he jumped over and did the Fosbury flop over the pool table. That was another one. He told the one where he moved mileage markers.
That's the one.
This video at Joplin, Missouri. I think it's Joplin, Missouri.
There's a mileage marker. That is just genius. He just goes, this can't be more than X amount. And like going, oh my God, that is just beautiful. I mean, you have to, again, it's like a magician. You plant the seed well in advance. You already know, but it takes time for it to kind of build, and you pick the right time, and there you go. You got him.
Beemer,
hook, line, and sinker.
Right. Remember, he's in the same era when we make sense of, people say, oh, how could people be so gullible and stupid? There's no internet. There's no Zoom. There's no anything at this time. And he's on the heels, a lot of these bits that we're talking about, he's on the heels of Chaplin, D.W. Griffith, the Stooges, that kind of genre where the pie in the face was still a funny medium.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
which is all this was. Okay, so Beemer, great job last week. And I don't know where you fall this week. We were off camera talking. You said the weather's even worse than it was before in Dallas for the Byron Nelson, correct?
Yeah. It's been raining here, cats and dogs. Like Monday was a complete washout for the most part, anyways. I think some of the players got in 9 holes. Yesterday was a decent day, but around 2:30 in the afternoon, the heavens opened up and it rained. It must have rained almost an inch in an hour. I mean, it was just crazy. And then
what's today like?
Today was better. No rain, no real rain this morning, but they're saying there might be 30% chance this afternoon, evening. And everything just kind of keeps bubbling up, coming up from Florida through Georgia, right into Charlotte. And it's too bad because the golf course, the golf course is in amazing shape, and it'll look amazing on TV, but they're gonna have to move some of the tee boxes up. What they've done here at Quail Hollow, Andy, is that they've started making teeing grounds a little bit like Augusta National, where you have the back tees and then you have the member tees, and there's very few tees in between, if any. And so you either play it all the way back, or the next tee box up could be 60, 70, 80 yards. It's crazy. Like number 9, they just expanded it to 530 yards. And from the all the way back tees, it's a 260-yard carry just to get to the fairway.
Wow.
And so, there's guys that, we have 20 club pros in the field this week at the PGA Championship that earned their way in a couple weeks ago. But yeah, it's going to favor the guys that hit it long just because of all the rain. This course is not going to play firm or fast. It might dry out by the weekend, but even on Thursday, Friday, they can't do much to it. The greens are going to be fine. They're going to be a little bit firm and fast because they have the Sutter systems here, but it's not, you're going to have guys that are going to struggle, especially with the length. Guys are adding fairway metals and hybrids in their bag all week long. It's been pretty amazing to watch.
So Beaver, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about your obviously victory in the PGA in 2002. I was thinking about it today. Do you get wistful and do you get, nostalgic about it? Or is it one of those things where you get even more, or you get nostalgic when you're in Minneapolis and you're at Hazeltine, or none of the above, or a little of both? I was thinking about it lunch day. I was like, he's gotta have something in his heart when at the PGA. He wouldn't be human if he didn't.
Well, yeah. Of course I do. Of course I love going to the PGA, and I don't make any bones about it. I go into the locker room a lot more often this week, where normal tour events I won't do that. I don't mind hanging out there. I've earned my spot to be in that situation. I could play this week if I wanted to, but my body's just not allowing me to, and I'm fine with that. But I probably I don't get super nostalgic. To be fair, I probably do a little bit more at Hazeltine, but I think that I've been back to Hazeltine so many times because I'm a member there, and so I go back and I play with my friends, I play with my son, and it's it's just like a it's like I'm just part of the community when I'm up there, and I love it. And a lot of people come and say hi to me and introduce themselves, and it's great. I love being up there. Um, but I don't know if I ever get super nostalgic about any of that stuff. That's not me. Like I was doing something on the Golf Channel early this morning, and they kind of showed when I made the winning putt um, and back in 2002, and my wife came out and we hugged and kissed, and I was just laughing. I mean, I'm just like I was the anti-serious of, and I certainly wasn't emotional. I wasn't crying or anything like that.
No, I know that.
Like,
I know that
I
about
was like, let's go get drunk.
I've enjoyed, getting to know you. Is there any course, a little bit of, I'll let you off the hook here, Beemer. I know you don't like even talking about this stuff because you're just not an emotional type. Is there any course that gets to you maybe? Does Augusta get to you? Does no place. They really, it doesn't wire you like that.
No, you know, maybe Hazeltine when I first got back there, but last year when I went to Castle Pines for the first time in probably 20 years or so, I got a little nostalgic about that because it was a golf tournament, golf course that I'd won at. And even though they changed a little bit, everything is basically the same. But that was pretty cool going back and kind of thinking about some of the shots I hit and this and that. But no, I don't think there's any place that I get to that I kind of get goosebumps. I mean, I don't think I have that in me, to be fair. There's very few golf courses, where I would get like that, but I can't think of a whole lot. Certainly not Augusta, because that place just scares the bejesus out of me. So, but I can't really think of any golf course that it would be. To me, it's more about the people that I'm there with than anything else, Andy. It's if it's friends or somebody I haven't seen in a long time or whatever. That's the only time that it would kind of get nostalgic in that way.
I got you. All right. So you looked at this weekend. So did I. I found it very, very difficult. I think the house has found it very, very difficult. We always go with Rich, who's just been on fire first. But based on the homework I've done, I've sensed when you throw the weather in as an outlier that even the offshore Vegas, everybody's trepidatious from the way I interpret numbers about this tournament. This tournament is not going to come easy. And there's people.
What's the betting pay? Is Rory still the betting favorite? Or
Yes.
Scheffler?
Yes.
Rory's betting favorite.
Yes.
I figured he would be.
So there's guys, I'll lay a couple breadcrumbs that the house wants to like, but they just are having a hard time. They want to like Homa here. They just do. If you look at the homework, you'll see they want to like Homa, but I'm sure that the way they look at it is that long hitting piece is killing them about really wanting Homa. They still like Homa, and they're going to take on anybody who wants to play Homa. I'm just throwing out a name that kind of was in my round list. Where do you call somebody like Homa here? I know he's won here before.
He has won here before. I can see that a little bit. I guess there's some sparks to his game a little bit, and winning here and when he won here, the golf course is the same as when he won here, with the exception of obviously 9 and I think 16 as well. They pushed back to 530 as well, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. But funny enough, I've got to look. I've got where I'm going with it. I'm not going to pick the usual suspects this week, just because.
Okay.
Again, I could say Rory all day long. You can't go wrong with those bets if that's what you're looking for. So
take us into it, Beaner. Where? What are you thinking?
So what I'm thinking is, let me try and.
So last week, Rich, you talked about before you gave your picks, you talked about going on YouTube, looking at the flyover of the cricket club and how Fleetwood just screamed.
Yeah.
Did you do the same thing for this, or do you know Quail Hollow well enough?
No, I know Quail Hollow very, very well.
Okay. No need. So cricket club, you didn't know.
Cricket club, I had no earthly idea. So, but it's really interesting because, again, I kind of know what it's going to take to play well here. And, I've got I'm going to try and get all these guys in my little doohickey real quick because, but it's a golf course that it's not just off the tee. It's around the greens as well.
It's around the greens.
It's around the greens. And I, you know, as much as I think that you have to hit it far, you know, or guys are adding in fairway metals, you know, 7 woods and hybrids and things like that. I'd be surprised or I'd be shocked if more guys didn't put in 62 to 64 degree wedges in their bags, because you've got to hit it straight up. You can't get around that fact. You have to hit it straight up around the greens, because you can't put that much spin on the golf ball, sadly. But you know, it's you've got to be very creative. You have to you've got to be really, really good at doing all that. And where the heck is this other guy? I've got to find this guy, because I've got my 3 picks. And again, you're going to be a little surprised.
I'm already getting excited. All right. You had to go first. What are you looking for, Rich?
Yeah, you go first. Cause I'm just trying to figure when this guy's playing.
So as you people know that watch this, I love reverse line movement. It's not always applicable. We are doing this at 4 o'clock ish on Wednesday. So last week we really didn't have it. We did it on Tuesday. There needs to be more time for you to actually see it. Rich will get a kick out of this. There is one big reverse line movement. I'm going to save that for the last one. The other 2 are reverse line-ish.
Okay.
And I like that. I also like when the reverse line is confirmed from Vegas as well as the offshore. Let me say that.
Right.
I like reverse line every single time, but I also really love it when it's not just a book, because folks, I don't have the timestamps of when this occurred. And even talking about reverse line movement seems like a novel concept for the internet, which is sad, because you really shouldn't be betting this stuff if you don't know what reverse line movement is, because it's everything. It's everything. It really is, Rich. It's the biggest power that's It's the biggest power there is. So
I would be under the like, oh, I like the colors of that. You know, I like, you know, listen, I go against all odds the way that I look at guys, and you're going to love my picks.
I'm looking forward to it. So these are reverse line-ish. The final one is reverse line.
Okay.
We'll start with one that's a little bit Joe Public-y for me. I normally don't like the Xanders, the Justin Thomases, the Rahms, those kind of things. We're going to take Justin Thomas over Xander as selection number 1. Justin Thomas. Again, there's places out there that are shading. The whole market has gone towards Xander over Thomas. There's a couple of places, specifically the Wynn Sportsbook. In doing my picks this week, I really saw that the Wynn Sportsbook wants to get involved this week. That's the place. We're name names here. That's the place that could get involved and is taking some serious.
But do me a favor, use Caesar's Sportsbook too, because I know the guys that own Caesars.
I wish I had the number. I don't have their numbers. I would love it, Beemer. I would love it. I don't have those to quit.
I might be able to put you in touch with somebody there. I mean, I know kind of the it's the Carano family.
Yep.
I mean, it's publicly traded, but I think that they're kind of the spearheads of it all. But I know one of the guys that's been with them for decades.
Yeah.
And I'll see if I can't put something together. When, you know, off
to talk about reverse line movement and that kind of stuff. They'd love to talk about something. That's a great topic. So Justin Thomas over Xander is my first selection. My second selection will be Hideki Matsuyama over Joaquin Niemann. So
interesting.
Interesting. Most of the market has Niemann emphatically over.
I would imagine.
Right. Except for Wynn, except for an offshore that I saw was hedging towards Hideki. Again, these are just that's where I like to be, is on a reverse line movement. So the first selection was Justin Thomas over Xander. The second was Hideki
over Niemann.
Hideki plus 110. Let's just throw it there. Justin Thomas plus 100. So just no juice. Here comes the big one. I don't know why, where, who, what. Who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody? Tom Kim. The Wynn Sportsbook is making no bones about it. They're buying up anybody that wants to get in Tom Kim's way this weekend. Now, either we're putting ourselves on the map here, take it to the streets with that kind of call. I'm not saying he's going to win the tournament, but I am saying that I can mathematically show you that Wynn Sportsbook is diametrically opposite, Rich, to the entire market on this. They're going heavy on Tom Kim. His matchup, for the record, is against Ryan Fox, but the way that the numbers look, the way I graded it out, is they like this guy. And it's weird because he's not a big hitter. He doesn't really fit the DNA of what we're going to get this weekend, but they're in love with this guy.
Well, they love him because of his performance at the President's Cup a couple years ago, and I can see that. But he's not the same player that he was. But again, when
that's
you come back
good answer. That's where the love fest is with them.
Yeah, but again, when you come back to a place that you've had success at, it's hard not to get excited. It's hard not to feel good about yourself, about your game. So I can understand that. Yeah. And one of my picks has had success here too. So, and maybe two of them, I don't know. I can't quite remember.
Please.
I know he didn't win it for. Okay. So, my first pick is going to be Ricky Fowler.
Wow.
Yeah. There's just been something about his game. I was just on the driving range last weekend and just watching him hit some balls. And he was having a nice little chat with me. But every time I looked up, I mean, he hit it right where he's aiming. The swing looked great. And he had a decent week. I know he got a sponsor's invite, but with both last week and this week, he got an invite from PGA America. And he's won here before. And I just think that, he's been playing well. And it looks to me like he is super confident in every facet of his game. I think he had a top 20 finish last week, maybe even a top 15. But I also think that because he was a pick, he's got something to prove a little bit, right? So he's my first pick of the week.
Okay.
My second is going to be Sam Burns, and it's God's honest truth. I was flipping through my phone right here, and I had somebody else picked, but I'm like, nope, I'm going to like him because he's got a really, really good short game. Now, granted, he's been good this year, hasn't been great. I mean, hasn't won, but this guy can win at any given moment and any given time, and he certainly can move it out there with the best of them. Now, the last guy you probably have never heard of. In fact, I'd say probably a lot of the people that listen to this, they're going to be like,
"Can I take a guess? Can I take a guess?
Sure.
Can I take?" With that lead in, I'm going to go. The first thing that came in my head was Dean Burmester.
Nope.
Second was Lori Canner. Canner.
You won't know who this guy is, I don't think.
So those aren't even close.
No, not really.
Did Tom McKibben?
No. Marco Penge.
I've never heard of him.
I know you haven't. Marco Penge, Penge. Funny enough, it's common knowledge he got suspended from the European Tour. I think it was either late last year and early this year, because back when he was on the Challenge Tour, he would be on the road or be at home, and he would get bored and loved golf. He was just a fanatic about it, and he bet on golf. He would bet 10 quid on Rory versus whoever. He would bet on the Europeans versus the Americans, the Ryder Cup, whatever it was. It wasn't a substantial amount of money, but they made it, for whatever reason, they made a
suspension.
They suspended him, and he's like, okay, fine. I did it. I accept it. And he came back out, and I think it was his third start back in the European Tour this year that he won, which got him into this tournament. And I played 13 holes on Tuesday. I was supposed to play all 18, but thankfully the rain came in because my body was hurting and I didn't want any more of this golf course.
It's savage out there, isn't it, Beemer? I mean,
it's savage. It's savage. Yeah. And so anyways, he teed off this on the 10th hole and played through the 13th hole. He hits this golf ball so far and drove it right down Main Street. It was a joke. And then I watched him around the greens, and it was an even bigger joke. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy just got the makings potentially of a superstar. I could kind of see maybe where some flaws in his game come into play. I haven't seen his stats. I haven't looked up anything. Alls I know, and I'll send you a video of this once we get done. Alls I know is the sound that it made when it came off the club face. And I was like, holy crap, this is unbelievable. And he hits it a country mile. He's a big, stocky, lean kid. And this guy's got all the makings of potentially a superstar. Again, he's still kind of in his infancy. He's only 26 years old, but I think that this guy could possibly be, a really big deal in the years to come. But he is, go look at his stats if you want to. But I'm telling you what, this guy, and I know it's out of left field, and you probably get a pretty darn good value out of it.
No. I love hearing it.
It's just out of left field. But I just the brief hour that I spent watching this guy, I thought, this is crazy. Like, how is he doing this?
Okay, so when I hear you describe him in my brain, I'm thinking a cross between Bobby Mack and Garrick Higo. Is it more like Bobby Mack, or is it more like Higo, or is it neither?
No. He's.
I love Bobby Mack.
There's a lot of the kid is lean, but a little bit thicker than Joaquin Neiman. Think of that build, but put on an extra 20 pounds. Put like on an extra 20 pounds, right? And he's 6'2", probably. And his shoulders go like that. They make a triangle. He's got a tiny waist and freaking legs like Matsuyama.
His boy, like Woodland. It's like Woodland.
It's a little bit like Woodland, except for a very lean Gary Woodland, like very lean. Again, Andy, this guy was unbelievable, and I don't know what to do this week.
Playing with him, how does that go down?
He came over to the. We made the turn, and there was a kind of a little bit of a wait because guys were jumping out there, and I think he and Tommy knew each other, and so he asked if he could join us. We're like, absolutely. And I'm sitting there and I knew he hit a long way. I'd seen him on TV before, but a couple of our guys at Sky Sports were just raving about how far he hits it. And all of a sudden I saw it in person. I'm like, holy shit. I mean, my jaw dropped when I saw and heard it. It was like nothing I've ever heard before. I don't know how he doesn't cave. He probably has to travel with 4 or 5 different club heads, because he'll probably cave the face in at least 2 of them a year. Wow. without a doubt.
Wow.
Yeah. Go YouTube this guy and watch him. He's sensational. He is some kind of talent. Again, whether or not he realizes that potential or not remains to be seen. But boy, I'd tell you what, he's got a head start like no other right about now. And he just seems.
It seems like these conditions are going to be a friend to him too.
These conditions will definitely be a friend to him. So I'm interested to see how he kind of handles everything. I don't know how many majors he's played in, if any. I don't know what his career record is, other than I know that he won on the European Tour not too long ago. I didn't know anything about this. I still don't know a whole lot about this guy, other than what I just saw. And what I saw was absolutely otherworldly.
Wow. Marco Penge?
Yeah. Marco Penge, Penge. Yep. He's, I think he's from Manchester area, I think. But yeah, super. I mean, this guy's a
for
talent.
Me, one more time. I'm Justin Thomas over Xander. I'm Hideki over Neiman. I am Tom Kim over Ryan Fox. Beemer, on the other hand, is Sam Burns, Marco Penge, and his first one was Ricky Fowler. So the Fowler one's also interesting. Rick Beemer, you're not chalky this weekend. I mean, you normally.
Well, you told me that, listen, I'm going to try and change it up and not try and push just the win. I'm going to find guys who I think that could be of good value to your guys. Again,
that's all.
And listen, again, you have to understand, I literally had Sergio Garcia in my mix, in my lineup. And then I saw Sam Burns and I thought, ooh, Sam Burns, that guy can chip and putt pretty damn good. And that's why I picked him over Sergio. It literally was that easy. I mean, like I haven't seen Sam hit a golf ball in forever. I will try and find different, I guess, value for the summer folks out there. but I'm just like, it's so much
Trust me, Rich.
fun looking at this
Collective
stuff.
thank you for we're golf nerds. We love the Marco Penn story. We just eat that up. That's
Listen, you guys, whoever's listening to this, all 12 of you, check this guy out. That's what my buddy who's a radio broadcaster, he'd always say, thanks to all 12 people listening to it today. And I'm going, whatever, dude. So, but it's
12?
Yes, my mom just joined. She's a big fan of you.
I love it. Beemer, till we meet again, buddy. Stay
Absolutely.
tuned. Once again, stay tuned, please, for the Kevin Cook Titanic Thompson interview, which is coming up next. Of course, we'll be back with Beemer next week. Rich, have a good one out there at Quail Hollow.
Will do, man. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Looking forward to seeing how this thing shakes out, man. It could be, Andy, it's could go down to be one of the epic all-time major championships, and it could well play in space. Who knows? But I think it's gonna be really good.
Well, when I think of Quail Hollow, I do think of the Pereira putting it in the creek on 18.
Oh no, that was Southern Hills.
That wasn't at Quail Hollow?
No, Southern Hills. And that was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, that was brutal. Where's Pereira? I don't think he's on the live, correct?
Yes, he is.
But you don't hear much from Pereira anymore. No.
I think he's playing okay though. I don't think it's not like he's playing bad. You just got to look him up. Yeah, I don't follow live, so
I got you. Philly,
yes, sir.
Beemer.
You got it, buddy.
This episode of Taking It to the Streets is brought to you by Wrightwood Medical, the leader in used and refurbished medical equipment. Wrightwood specializes in ultrasound equipment, but can also be your vendor of choice when sourcing lower-cost alternatives for your operating room suites, scanning the entire medical spectrum. From single physician offices to larger hospitals, Wrightwood is the lower-cost solution for your everyday medical equipment needs, and all of Wrightwood's equipment comes with warranty. You can reach Wrightwood directly at www.wrightwoodmedical.com. That is with a W, WRIGHTWOOD medical, or 773-848-7100. Again, 773-848-7100. If it's used medical equipment, it's Wrightwood Medical.
Welcome back to Taking It to the Streets, the show that is brought to you by Wrightwood Medical. www.wrightwoodmedical.com is your leader in used and refurbished medical equipment. 773-848-7100. I've wanted to have this gentleman on that you're seeing on the left side of the screen for a very long time. We'll give a little bit of a backstory. We always bring you somebody that you've probably never quite heard of, but when I give you the backstory, be like, oh yeah, I've heard of this guy. All right. We're going to start with why he's here, and then we'll bring it up to the current. If you've read the book on Titanic Thompson, it came out in 2011. It was just a fascinating story. Now, we always ping pong back and forth with guests. Hey, what about Billy Walters? What do you know about Billy Walters? He's kind of our Wizard of Oz character here on Taking It to the Streets. Kevin will be able to actually shed some light about that said Wizard of Oz character on Taking It to the Streets. But before Billy, there were many others. And one of the most incredible characters ever was Titanic Thompson. Damon Runyon was fascinated to him to the point where the word is that Sky Masterson from Guys and Dolls was the motivation of Titanic Thompson. We could do way too many stories about this guy. If you want to read the book, get it. It's by Kevin Cook. And we're going to go to it in a second. Want to welcome Kevin. Kev, dude, thank you for coming on Taking It to the Streets. It's great to see you. Thanks for making some time for us.
It's good to be with you.
All right, so let's go to what your current work is right now. So the last couple of years you've put out, the current book is on the Tiger Slam. And then a year ago, you put out a book on the Waco Rising. That's a pretty big chasm between the two topics.
That's true. My first book was a golf book way back when. That was called Tommy's Honor. The Golf Channel still runs a movie based on it somewhat frequently. And I've written about the Space Shuttle Challenger and about what happened in Waco, about a notorious murder of Kitty Genovese in 1964 in New York City. So it's been good to it would be terrible to write, it seems to me, about the same topic again and again and again. And it was a thrill to come back on the 13th book to golf. I was fascinated by what happened in Waco, Texas, in 1993. That was the standoff between David Koresh and his Branch Davidians and the FBI, a truly dramatic part of recent American history. And then it was good to come back to golf with the Tiger Slam after quite a few years. I happen to believe that the Tiger Slam is the top feat, not just in golf history, but in all of sports history.
You're not alone. You're not alone. Absolutely amazing. Give us a little backstory before we talk Titanic with you, as far as your previous lives you were an editor at Golf Magazine. You were an editor, senior editor at Sports Illustrated during an incredible period. We talked about it offline. Rick Riley, Alan Shipnunk, the great, for my purposes, Frank DeFord is my favorite Sports Illustrated writer ever. You said you had a Frank story, actually.
Well, there were so many terrific stories and great colleagues at Sports Illustrated. I learned an awful lot about golf from so many of them. One of my stories was a follow-up to a Frank DeFord story. And DeFord would come in the office from time to time, always dressed perfectly, very big man, very distinguished, and he always had the mo juiced. And he's someone that you knew when he was on the floor. But he went to Indiana many years ago, 1964 maybe, to write about Rick Mount, the great jump shooter from Lebanon, Indiana, went on to Purdue. And Rick Mount was the first high school team sport athlete ever on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And it was huge in Indiana, where my dad happened to be a high school basketball coach. He was the athlete in the family, and I got close enough to be able to tell who was really good from the merely pretty good. I went to follow up Frank DeFord about 25 years later when Rick Mount was the dad of a young player, Richie Mount, who was currently on the Lebanon basketball team. And it was about all of the families. So what you'd wind up doing is talk to people who had spoken to Frank DeFord for this famous story 25 years before. And one thing that they told me was, and I thought this was fascinating about his method, because I'm either taping somebody or taking voluminous notes. And they said that DeFord was in town about a week, gathering, sort of meeting everybody, charming everybody, and he never took a note, they said. And yet he quoted people at length. No one ever said, oh, that's not what I said, or that was out of context. And I came to believe that it wasn't because he quoted everybody verbatim, but that he knew the people he was talking about. He knew the characters so well that he would put down the quote that they intended to say.
Amazing.
Or that they would have said, had they said it even more perfectly, and it wasn't manufactured or artificial in any way. And that was a striking thing about Frank DeFord.
Amazing.
Did you say Riley was there too? No, but I want to hear your Frank DeFord.
Well, my Frank DeFord story is 1987. I am a high school senior deciding on what college I'm going to go to. And my dad takes me to the University of Missouri. I'm an aspiring journalist. And we walk into the big Jesse Hall on the campus of University of Missouri, Columbia, great journalism school. And the speaker was Frank DeFord. And Frank gave an incredible lecture about the highs, the lows of journalism. And somebody raised their hand and asked him to talk about an article that he did about roller derby.
All right.
And he gave this incredible story of stories. I was just fascinated. I was hooked from that point forward. I wanted to be a journalist. It was just amazing. And I followed his career closely. I loved the National. Was it a daily magazine that he did on sports only? That was Frank DeFord.
Yes, and with a lot of money from south of the border, they did some wonderful journalism. I wrote a couple of pieces for the National, and a great friend of mine, Rob Flater, was an editor there. They did some good stuff. The long lamented National.
I thought it was great, and I thought he was amazing on real sports.
Yes, well, one of the things that I always thought, not only did he abhor cliches, And in sports writing, as you well know, it's so easy, and you read so many things that have been just practically pre-fed to the reader, that he avoided cliches, and he also remembered that the people he was writing about were real people. It's easy to see them sometimes as characters in a movie or something like that. You're jetting into their life and then back out. You may never see them again. He bore that in mind at all times, I think.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay. So I want to bring this up to Titanic Thompson. How did you end up wanting, what was the motivation? Probably 2009 when you figured out, hey, I'm going to do a book on Titanic Thompson. Who's the first person who told you about it?
Oh, golly. I had heard about Titanic for many years. I mean, if you're around golfers, especially a little bit older golfers, and I spent a little time on the senior tour early on and found that fascinating. There's a rain delay. People are going to be telling stories. And so many of the old timers would tell Titanic Thompson stories. Gary McCord, a really good Champions Tour player, is an expert on Titanic and actually based many of the tricks and stunts in Tin Cup on old stories of Titanic. You hear so many legends about this man, and some of them rang true and some of them didn't. And I wound up spending a couple of years meeting his surviving sons, meeting his last wife, the last of his 5 wives, who became a great friend of the family. And the real story of Titanic Thompson, who, as you say, the hero of Guys and Dolls, played by Marlon Brando in the movie, Sky Masterson, based on Titanic Thompson by Runyon. That was because Runyon was the best sports writer in New York City at the time, and Titanic blows into town. He's cleaning everybody out, and Runyon wants to tell his story in the newspaper, and Titanic said no. He said, mine ain't the kind of work that publicity helps. So Runyon bases a fictional character on him, one of the most memorable of all. And I wound up just being utterly fascinated by Titanic. He's hard to warm up to as a personality, but not as someone who understood sports gambling better than anybody else of his time, and who was the true master of the proposition bet.
Right. There's so many Titanic stories we could do. I'll just, off the top of my head,
Okay.
from reading the book a few years ago, the one about, taking on Al Capone on a bet, challenging Al Capone that, hey, I can hit a driver 500 yards right now in the middle of the Chicago winter. And Capone takes the bet, and basically Titanic takes him out to somewhere in Lake Michigan, we can best believe, puts a tee in the ground, slams it off of the ice with a hickory driver, which should go no longer farther than 200 yards, and boom, it rolls and rolls and rolls. He wins the bet. That's 500. They went past the 500 yards they bet on. There's a time where they're playing pool somewhere, and the guy loses a $200, let's just say, can't remember the exact number. It's a ton of money back then, $200 to Titanic, and Titanic says, hey, let's go double or nothing, that I can jump over this pool table without touching any of my body to the pool table. He puts a mattress on the other side and takes a running start and leaps over. So you get the point, folks, when you listen to this. That's what he is, but it also brings me my question to Kevin. Who was he? Was he a gambler? Was he a hustler? Was he a professional athlete? Because back then he said, I will join the PGA Tour because I'm not going to take a pay cut. So was he the best golfer in the world circa 1931? Is that safe to say that?
He was certainly the best left-handed golfer in the world at that time. And what Ben Hogan said about him, Hogan was one of the players who, when he was young, Titanic would say, oh, I'll take this fellow who's a caddy over here. And Hogan posing as a caddy. He played Byron Nelson, and now Nelson was very pure as snow. Didn't realize that this is a big money match. Nelson's backers, Titanic had convinced them to give Titanic 3 shots. So Nelson beats him by a couple and is very pleased. Well, Titanic won the bet. And as you mentioned, a couple of these, I think connoisseurs of proposition betting understand that it's all about the setup. The elegance is in the setup. The pool table, he could jump like a herd of bullfrogs, Titanic always said. But he managed to do the Fosbury flip This is a flip over the table to land on his back before there was any such high jump in the Olympics.
Right.
He anticipated things. He was a great bowler, but one of the ways he won a huge bet in horseshoes against the world horseshoe champion by setting up his own horseshoe pit. And it happened to be a foot longer than regulation. Titanic had practiced on that for a month so he could throw ringers, and the world champion at the time couldn't get the ball to the what's it called, the stake. There was another one of my favorite is one of the simplest of all of Titanic's bets when he's riding with a couple other gamblers and they're somewhere in Missouri going down the highway. They pass a sign that says Joplin 20. When Titanic says, that sign's a lie. It's no 20 miles to Joplin. And the other fellows are saying, oh, I'll bet you they're pretty serious about that in the highway department. They know what they're talking about. So the bets rise and rise and rise. They're doubling back and forth, hundreds and hundreds of dollars on the bet. Then they check the odometer once they get to Joplin. Oh, it's only 15 miles, which is because Titanic had hired a couple of guys the night before to take that sign and move it 5 miles closer to Joplin so the Titanic could win the bet. So it's a legitimate bet. It's all in the setup. And that's one of the things that Titanic said about Houdini, with whom he shared card tricks, when one of his wives at the time said, isn't it amazing what Houdini, these escapes he does on the stage? And Titanic said, it's good setups. That's what he's got.
He could beat Hagen. He could beat Hogan. He could beat Snead in golf. Okay? He could beat Minnesota.
He hid out from Sam Snead. He wanted to tell. He said to Snead, let's play for big money, and they kind of shied away from each other.
Interesting. So why was that?
He admired.
He was serviceable.
He admired Snead's swing. He had helped Hogan. Of course, he also picked out Lee Trevino when Trevino was an assistant pro down in El Paso, and this was when Titanic was too old to play.
The Ray Floyd game.
Yes, and he was a great judge of talent. Nobody had ever heard of Trevino. Ray Floyd had never heard of Trevino, but Floyd said, "I can beat anybody I've never heard of." And they played this amazing match. So Titanic, his skills were amazing. He was functionally illiterate, a grade school dropout, couldn't read. He had his wives read the newspaper to him, but he had a magnificent mathematical mind and understood, say, poker odds long before Billy Walters or anybody else.
The only thing that could beat him were the horses.
Well, that's true.
Nothing to beat him.
That's true. And he tried many different ways to fix horse races. And one of the best stories,
A story from Mexico.
Yes, he did fix a race by telling the jockeys that he had a sniper on the roof, and that sniper was going to shoot whatever jockey came in ahead of his horse. And what happened was that in the home stretch, they're all holding back. Titanic's horse is on the way to the finish line. He's gonna make a mint until his horse breaks her leg on the back stretch. And at that point, the other jockeys are all pulling their horses back and skidding sideways so that they don't finish ahead of ties. And he did say that was the one sport that he never could beat, the horse races.
To me, Billy Walters is a taboo name to even mention today. That's the vibe I get when I talk to people on my podcast, when I talk to people outside the podcast. It's always a hush in the room, and people always like to pretend they don't know who he is. They do all the weird stuff when it comes to Billy Walters. I'm fascinated with Billy Walters. I think they're going to write. I think his book's unbelievable, and they'll write many, many books in years to come on his life. Now, is there a parallel between Thompson and Billy Walters? I've read everything on both these guys I can read. Billy Walters, no slouch as a golfer. He's not as Titanic Thompson.
I played with him several times, and
okay,
he'll be putting one-handed, making a deal on the phone, shooting 70 while I'm shooting 80. And it's a tremendous short game. Like real gamblers who play golf. They'll all murder you inside 60 yards. And he was brilliant at that, always made solid contact. But I think the true similarity between Billy Walters and Titanic Thompson is that they both knew that there's no such thing as luck, that it's all math. And if you can get an edge that way, which is what he did, what Bill Walters did when they broke casinos in Vegas with the computer group, and he continued later. It got harder and harder as the methods of professional gamblers improve. But Bill Walters almost always stayed ahead of the crowd.
Where do you fall on? Yeah. I think. I mean, where do you fall on him? I mean, obviously you read the book, correct?
Yes.
You read the book. You were, I think, part of the book on some level because I read it.
Armin Kantayan did a fine job. He's terrific, and I knew many of those stories from Bill himself. I think many people see him as a guy who evaded income taxes because that's why he was put in prison. And Bill has his own views on the justice or injustice of that. And of course, he had a great disagreement with Phil Mickelson, whom he wanted to stand up and defend him during that. So I think one of the things that happens to people is if there's so much information out there that, once you get known for one particular thing, whether it's being the greatest gambler in Vegas, sports bettor in Vegas history, or whether it's having to go to prison for an income tax charge, that's all that people even remember. So I suspect that that's maybe one reason that people are less inclined to sing Bill Walters' praises than they would have been 20 years ago.
He has created millions of dollars for philanthropy, which he documented through the Nicholas book.
That's true.
That I think that should be noted in the Bill Walters. I'm not trying to make him into the Pope that we just lost, but I'm just trying to make it that there's really no philanthropic angle towards Titanic Thompson. There is towards Bill Walters.
Which true. Titanic was no philanthropist at all. Because he never accumulated the sort of wealth that Bill had.
Well, give me the similarities, give me the differences between Titanic and Bill Walters.
Oh, well, I mean, the times were different. By the time Bill was breaking Vegas at the time, that was a team operation. It was really like a NASA mission. How are we going to create an edge over the sports books in Vegas? It's practically impossible to do now. It was almost impossible to do then, but they figured out a way to do it. Now, Titanic was not a team member by any means. He was a road gambler. Went out by himself. He would team up with one other fellow now and then when you need to, but he was a lone wolf. And he was also, in the old style of gambler, it was often said that every real gambler dies broke. I think Bill Walters is way too smart for that, but that was the case with Titanic. Every time he had suitcases full of cash in the closet. He had $1,000 bills that he would hand out, but he would lose it all. He lost $1 million to Minnesota Fats, and he teams up with Fats and goes back. Fats, who called him the greatest action man of all time, then he wins it all back. He didn't see money as an end. I think he saw it only as a means for more action. And I think Bill Walters had a more mature view of accumulating wealth than that.
So the two of them, though, are, I guess, hearing you talk, Billy Walters' story really doesn't dovetail into Titanic's. It's more like that MIT blackjack team. It's more like bringing down the house than it is Titanic. If anything, it's about swinging the edge that Vegas, of course, has on the player in your favor. That's mathematical, and using it aggressively.
I think that's true, and that's not the proposition. The proposition bet is often a trick. Titanic would say, I can move this boulder, I can roll this boulder down the hill. Well, that's because he had the boulder hollowed out the day before.
And Billy doesn't. And Billy would strike me that if one of those propositions were made to him from Titanic, he'd tell him to go screw himself. Like, I'm not going to take that bet.
Exactly, because as Runyon put it in one of his stories about Sky Masterson, if a fellow tells you that he's going to pull the jack of clubs out of a deck of cards and it's going to spit cider into your ear, don't bet him because you're going to have an earful of cider by the time this bet is over with. And yes, I think one of the things that people, when they read about Titanic, they'll say, well, how gullible were those people in the 20s and 30s?
Right, exactly.
To take these bets, but there was much less information out there. There were stories about the guys from the Old West who could do amazing things that you couldn't even believe. And one of the reasons the gamblers who lost to Titanic didn't hate him and shoot him is that there was such an elegance to the bet. He lived up to the bet as it was put forward. Even if you got tricked, you had a Titanic Thompson story to tell for the rest of your life in the 19th hole.
And really, Kevin, it's no different than today. People betting Super Bowl props, they're going to look back 100 years from now and say, how could someone in the year 2024 be stupid enough to only take 6-1 on a safety, which is clearly 35-1, and we all have computers to back that theory. I mean, 6-1 is what Las Vegas will give you that a safety will occur in a Super Bowl. Isn't that more insane than what Titanic prop the guy?
It is. It's some of the props. I mean, I like how long is the national anthem going to last, and what kind of hat is Lady Gaga going to wear? These are opportunities for some insider trading that you can't believe with prop bets in the Super Bowl. I think Titanic would be really amused by the prop bets, the legal prop bets, after the FBI was after him most of his life, after J. Edgar Hoover personally would send out warnings, the notorious Titanic Thompson is coming to your town. I think the fact that betting has become so easy and that college students can use their phones as a betting machine is a great danger, and we're likely to hear some awful things coming out of sports in the next 7 or 8 years as betting becomes even more intertwined with the games we love.
Yeah. And you merge that with student athletes. That's now an oxymoron. Paid players out there playing football. You're right. Something's bound.
It's a real danger. At the same time, I'd rather see the players. I think college athletes have been exploited horribly for our whole lives, and it's better that they, in the same way that the baseball fans get so angry, how can this guy be making $20 million a year? I'd rather he have it because he has an incredible skill than the owner have it because the owner inherited the team from his grandpa.
I'm with you 1,000%. The NCAA put us in this spot many, many times over. They wouldn't so much as even give these kids long-term health, which is insane. Right? They would constrict them. They couldn't transfer. Their coach could come, recruit them to a school. The coach could leave for $1 more and go from Boise State to Weber State for $1 more. The kid who went to Boise State to specifically play for him has to sit out a year.
That's right.
I mean, it was all such nonsense and greed that got us to where we are. I don't think the players, the 18-year-olds are the bad guy in this story.
Well, and one reason that has changed so much and so quickly recently is another guy I know a little bit, Sonny Vaccaro, who was played by Matt Damon in the movie.
I love that movie too, and I love his story. The whole night series,
and he took the NCAA to court and beat him, and that was what made the walls start tumbling down.
So, give me 2 or 3 on your brain right now, next books that you'd like to write or that are in production, or how does it happen? Where do you come to a topic that you want to do?
I can't talk about the next one that I'm going to do, but it's underway, and this is the really fun part where you don't have to produce pages. You get to talk to people and plot the whole thing out and do a great deal of research. Those things are fabulous. You know, there are stories in the future that I want to do if I can find the right home for a book about. Joe Pine, for instance, was a radio titan and then television many, many years ago, who invented the attack interview and anticipated so much of what Fox News became. There was a great, great story in the life of Joe Pine. There's a fellow named Milt Campbell, who was the first black decathlon champion. And had a great story. He was also in the same backfield with the Cleveland Browns with Jim Brown. And Milt Campbell was told to leave the team because, unlike marrying white women as Jim Brown was charged angrily with by fans and administrators, and of course had a beautiful poster with Raquel Welch. Well, Milt Campbell, Brown's teammate, married a white woman. They fell in love, and they had a family. And once the Paul Brown, running the Cleveland Browns, found out about that, he said, "You're no longer a member of the Cleveland Browns." Milt Campbell has to go and play football in Canada. He was a great swimmer. He was one of the great athletes of his time, or really of any time. And I think there's a book to be told about him. There's another where, since we love gamblers, Nick DeGreek, who was a great associate of Titanic Thompson. There's a good life story in that as well. But we hope that there will be many more books ahead. At least I do.
What are your favorite two, before I say goodbye to you, what are your favorite two sports books? Do you have two that stick out to you? I mean, here's Kevin, where I'm going, is that I love horse racing.
Right.
I think Seabiscuit is my favorite sports book. Or at Hillenbrand. I love the angle she took with that book. Anybody that understands horse racing will understand and I enjoy the movie too. I'm not one of these cynical, oh, the book's always better than the movie. Of course, that's always true. But I really, really love her book, because the book shows you the grueling side of being a jockey, having to make weight, having to live race by race, town by town. A Disney movie is not going to show you the grueling story of Red Pollard into George Wolfe. It's just not fun to watch something like that. How one loses the mount through injury, but she really shows you the grueling side of how to make weight and how it's all about weight. Second book for me is probably going to be Ball 4. I cried like a baby at the end of Ball 4 when, Boughton gets to come out on Old Timers Day at Yankee Stadium. I just think those stick out in my head as real big time classics. Where do you fall? Have you read both of those?
Yes, and I think Hillenbrand was absolutely brilliant. She knows the horse game inside and out, and is a wonderful prose stylist. Ball 4 was so important, and I read Ball 4 at a time when you still think of the players because they're sanitized. Their stories are sanitized, and Jim Boughton tried very hard and effectively to get through that and portray these are just young men who are on the make, and the world, the inside view, I thought was brilliant. I thought Robert Creamer's book on Babe Ruth was a magnificent book. I love Phil Simmons' basketball book, which is, for a recent one, that has changed. And now we've got all these books about various sports lists, really, that came from that book, I think. But I love the way that you described the difference between Seabiscuit the book and Seabiscuit the movie, because there is always hope that there will be a Titanic Thompson movie. As Gary McCord once told me, he's the most cinematic sumbitch who ever walked the earth. And some of his stories are already familiar to viewers of Tin Cup. It's been optioned for a movie before. There've been talk about various, fascinating people. Clint Eastwood would have been the ideal Titanic Thompson in his day, and was interested in the project at one point. But for your listeners who are also readers of the very fine The Golfer's Journal, which Tom Coyne edits, there will be, in the upcoming Golfer's Journal, there's a story about the long road that Titanic Thompson has taken to try to get a movie made, and we still hope that there will be one.
Kevin, the older you get, you really realize these stories that talk ad nauseum about the journey versus the mountaintop are just stories of life. They're incredible. Right now, I'm reading Last Manager, story of Earl.
Oh, yes, the Earl Weaver book.
And here's a great manager. I mean, just there's no other way to put it. This guy was unbelievable for the Orioles, late 60s to the mid 80s. His story is about the time in the minors. He did 14 years in the minors as a player and as a manager. Mm-hmm. It's grueling. And that's after his childhood in St. Louis, which is just equally as grueling. It's a tough read. It is a tough read. I mean, almost Titanic's childhood almost feels glamorous. and hopeful compared to Earl Weaver's because he left. Titanic left, and in an America where you could leave, where you could go out and hitchhike and go to the great unknown, not worry that some child molester was going to pick you up on I-75 and, put your remains on Gilgo Beach. So is there something in that?
Yes, I think with the way that you talked about horse racing in Seabiscuit and in the very fine Earl Weaver book that's out now and many others, it's the hardship and the journey, and I think that enables us to see how hard earned the accolades that great athletes have really can be. It comes naturally to some, but not to very many. And I think we're seeing revolution in baseball now just by the application of science and incredible effort at Driveline and other places to maximize the ability of a human being to pitch a baseball. And now the analytics and the torpedo bats are fighting back in the other way. It's always a battle between offense and defense, and at least in those sports. And in any sport, I think it's a battle to maximize one's talent, to max out, as golfers say. And that's as fascinating as the result.
And Kevin, this will be for another time. We'll get you back on. But sports foretold the future as far as the battle between man and robot, analytics versus man. They have foretold this going back to, we'll just say for common understanding, Billy Beane. Obviously, it goes back before that, but that was really the seminal moment of analytics meets the man. Regular industry, be it education, medical, banking, whatever you want, is crossing that bridge as we speak, human versus AI. But let's not act like this is new ground. Sports crossed this bridge with Billy Beane on a $60 million payroll. How am I going to compete with a $300 million New York Yankees team? And he did successfully because of analytics. I digress, but I'm very pro analytics, okay? And I think I'm going to be very pro AI. I don't see how, the old timers will do the human needs to be there to tweak the analytic. No, that's not analytics. Analytics is trusting that, going back to our conversation about Bill Walters, that the computer is always right. The human is not always right. Where do you fall on that?
Well, numbers don't lie, and I believe that that's largely true. I mean, I think numbers can be misinterpreted. We learn a lot about small sample sizes and things like that as our analytics evolve. I think Michael Lewis's Moneyball book was so significant and important. Billy Beane was crucial, but there's no Billy Beane without Bill James. And I think that even before the Moneyball era, we're talking the 70s, Bill James is mimeographing reports saying, there may not be such a thing as protection in the batting order. Now, just the other day, Juan Soto said, I'm not finding as many good pitches to hit because Aaron Judge isn't batting behind me. It makes such good common sense that you get protection in the batting order. But Bill James said years ago, he doesn't think there's any such thing. And there isn't any such thing unless you can demonstrate it statistically. So, and I think that question is still open in an interesting way. I think platoon advantages can be interpreted and misinterpreted. We find golf stats are coming in, affecting things even more. So as you say, I think we're seeing the culmination of something that Titanic had a hint in his mind about, that Bill Walters brought into practice to make millions upon millions of dollars. And all it does is get more sophisticated all the time.
It shocks me when I think baseball, how this team in Tampa lives and dies by it. Okay, they are the quintessential. They make Moneyball look like they're the Yankees on payroll. But I'm talking about over a 20-year period that the Rays are a lower payroll than the A's ever were. Right? They take a year for them. And what's that?
They pioneered today's starter is only going to go a couple of innings.
There you go. Having cash. They have lived with using 4 pitchers a night. They've lived with sacrifice bunt no matter what. They've lived with all things algorithm. They're in the AL East. And I'm from Chicago, where people just dismiss the Tampa Bay Rays. as if it's a UFO. Folks, they've been around since about 93. They're in the AL East. They're constantly competitive, winning 90 plus games. Do the homework, you'll see. And they live by the algorithm. And everybody now live by the algorithm.
Right. The last 20 years of the Tampa Bay Rays, I think, are the next step in evolution from the Moneyball Oakland A's. And it'll be interesting to see what the next step after that is.
Absolutely. Kevin, thank you for coming on. This was a great conversation.
Andy, I really enjoyed talking with you, and thanks for your attention to the rules.
Goodbye from St. Pete. And remember, folks, you're only as good as your last trade. So never too high, never too low, till we meet again.